All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tinfoil Hat Society. This is a recurring segment that we have on Realms of the Mist. Coming with me today is, as always, the gracious host, Christopher Stolle. Have with us Serenity, and Blind Mike is with us as well. And although he can't really see what's going on, he could sure as fuck hear what's going on, and he's going to tell us what he thinks about that.
And I
But
definitely,
jumping.
for Blind Mike, let's also, we haven't done it yet because you don't know, you just came back. Blind Mike also does represent blindcaferadio.com. It is, I'll let Mike explain what Blind Cafe Radio is for people who don't know. I am one of actually the DJs on it. I'm on Monday nights playing some rock and metal, but, you know, Mike, give him a taste of what fucking Blind Cafe Radio is.
BlindCafeRadio.com is a subsidiary of BlindCafe.net, and BlindCafe.net is a Team Talk client that hosts blind people all over the world. So a whole bunch of blind people get together, chat, talk, and it's not just made for blind people. Sighted people go on and talk and all that as well. But it's a way to bring a community together since, especially with this COVID going on, it's definitely a way to bring a community together and everybody to talk. And, there's rooms that people can go in, like the church rooms or the game rooms or the chat rooms, whatever they want to go into, they can do. Now, as for Blind Cafe Radio, it's for members that want to learn how to become a DJ. And that's where I step in and teach them how to use the software, the equipment, and teach them the ins and outs of the radio so they can actually become that DJ on the air. And, the listeners that we do have, really enjoy the interaction that some of these members actually give. So it's just a really fun thing that we put together, and it's turning out to be bigger than what we expected. And we like that.
And of course, to tie in Blind Cafe Radio with Breaking the Fourth Wall Entertainment, we actually produce their podcast called the Naked DJs Podcast, which is a bunch of their podcasts get together and usually talk shop about music or things pertaining to the music entertainment world. So, guys, make sure you're checking that out wherever quality podcasts can be heard.
Correct.
Outstanding. So we're coming into this discussion off the heels of the George Floyd decision, and now we want to discuss a little bit of the underlying elements, some of the government elements, some of the more esoteric thoughts that are going on out there, where people are actually coming up with some conspiracy theories. And before we jump into that, I just want to lay a little bit of groundwork for everybody, and then we can jump in. First and foremost, the state of Minnesota awarded the Floyd family $26 or $27 million as an award in punitive damages without a civil suit actually being decided. And then in the law case of Chauvin versus the state, where he was convicted of murder and manslaughter, second-degree murder, in the case of George Floyd, they went through 127 jurors before they decided on the panel of 12. That opens up a lot of discussion on debate on the dark state of things and conspiracy and federal control and outreach of controlling some of this narrative that's been going on across the country for the past year during the lockdown and even going in before it. But this is something that has really taken center stage over the past year. So go.
Well, first and foremost, I'll jump in here just because of the two. It's freshest in my mind here. The two things I take away from this is one of the things you said as far as like the awarding of $27 million, apparently without any causality, just the city or state deciding, here you go, here's free money. Yet they could still file for a civic suit to pull more money out of the state for the death of George Floyd.
They could get a double dip.
They can get a double dip.
They could get a double dip.
And originally, double dipping is illegal, but it looks like they got around it.
Exactly. And then the second thing that sticks out to my mind, and definitely get your guys' opinion more, and this one is more of a conspiracy theory than anything else. Going through that many jurors, it sounds to me like they were handpicking the ones that would vote the right way.
The only other time I've seen that kind of an instance go on where that many jurors have been used or gone through in there, because whenever you're going through a capital case, both the defense and the prosecution, they're basically able to come up with about 30 or 40 questions that defines the juror's state of mind. Are you able to make a good decision? Are you able to decide fairly on a capital case? Have you ever been injured before in a capital case? These kinds of questions are kind of the parameter that's used. The only other time I've seen that many jurors gone through to reach a jury of 12 is on the fucking show Blacklist.
Yeah. That's my point. I mean, we've all been summoned to jury duty at one point in our life. We know how it goes. You know, we've all been summoned to jury duty at least once in our life. We know how it goes. And, of course, they're trying to weed out somebody that could be biased in the case or unable.
Yeah, as your brother was killed by a drunk driver and you're in a drunk driver lawsuit or some bullshit.
So
like
I
that.
actually,
they want to eliminate
earlier,
that person.
Before we actually even started talking, or before we started recording, I heard someone say that maybe that $27 million actually helped pay the 12 jurors to perform. You know, they actually were able to bribe the jurors with that $27 million. So maybe they are going to double dip.
I mean, that's a good possibility, but it sounds to me like they were handpicking jurors that they knew would be, what's the word I'm looking for here? Easily swayed to the right decision, a verdict?
For bribes.
I don't know if that's going to be that. I don't know if it's going to be that easily seen or discovered on the surface. I wonder if this is going to be something that we're going to find out 5, 10, or 15 years ago, that money went into the funding for somebody like BLM.
Well, I wasn't necessarily meaning the money. I was meaning going through 100 and some odd jurors, which is absolutely unheard of. Well, 30 maybe, 130 no. Yeah.
But what if that money was actually awarded to the family and mom and the sister, the people who are always in the news? They get their $3 million or $5 million or $10 million or whatever, but all of the other funds that get siphoned off by the NAACP and all these other lawyer funds and everything, we find out surfaces later for these other groups for things that we have not seen yet.
Well, it explains why the founder of BLM was able to buy a $2.7 million home.
This is only the start, and whenever you're dealing with somebody, and now we're dealing in something that I'm not really concerned about being fair or unbiased about. We're dealing with conspiracy, so I'm going to dive in balls deep on this. So whenever you're dealing with leaders of the Black Lives Movement, you're dealing with the separation between the organization's purpose and the leadership's dichotomy, or how they actually think of things, what their actual ideology is. You're talking about the two founders of the BLM being completely dyed-in-the-wool Marxist.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're hitting the nail on the head.
Organizers.
Well, you're hitting the nail on the head. A couple of years ago, including members of our podcasting company, had labeled me a racist because of the fact that I have been famously stating
Chris,
this.
God damn it.
Because I have famously been stating this, that although I agree with the ideals of BLM, what the ideals stand for, like on paper, what BLM is supposed to stand for, I agree with those ideals. However, the movement and their actions are nothing more and nothing less than homegrown domestic terrorism.
Yes.
Well, and Marxism is the actual label, and you're dealing with the difference between the organization and the leadership. There's two different things going on there. There are the true believers, the people who are going to show up and they're going to protest. They're going to be civil disobedience, but they're not going to cause violence. Whereas you have the people who want to come in and drop in the fucking Molotov cocktails and everything to get everything riled up. There's a difference between the two aspects of that group. And some of this money that was awarded out of hand and out of pocket by the state. One of these two leaders came from Milwaukee, which is not very far from Minneapolis. I'm just saying, I mean, there could be ties.
And maybe the one juror that they couldn't, bribe, that's why he got the death threat. Maybe all of them were bribed, and they were running out of time to get a jury together, so they had to let one person in, and maybe that one didn't get a bribe, and so he got a death threat instead.
I've never really believed that the deep state is going to operate on this much of a surface level whenever everything is front page media. They usually operate very far beneath the surface.
Yeah, but the
in
front page
ways
media
that you would not
operates with
notice.
them, though. So
Right.
the mainstream media is right there protecting everything they do.
Serenity?
Absolutely.
I have to say, I'm shocked that I even found, I think it was 14 because of the two alternates, but they found 14 people that didn't have a jaded view about the protests and George Floyd already. Like, I just really don't think that it was a fair trial, and it was like a government agenda trial. That they put on a nice show. They did what they were supposed to do. I think, it was a planned killing of George Floyd, whether it would have been him or the same situation. That was totally planned.
So then the question becomes, if you're going to really go down the rabbit hole on a real conspiracy, then you have to do one of two things. You have to either A, follow the white guy with the money, or B, follow the white guys that it helps. Where is that in this situation?
Oh, it's all about the downfall of capitalism and liberty of the United States. We know that a disarmed and divided nation cannot defend itself against a tyrannical government. What is
and
this
the last white guy we saw like that was Hitler. So who is the Hitler in this situation?
Kamala Harris. Actually, it's George Soros. Actually, it's George Soros, but it's Kamala Harris. Yes, I said it straight out.
She's the new white guy. Okay, cool.
Joe Biden is the face. He is the hand puppet that you entertain the kids with in front of the stand. But underneath the curtain is Kamala Harris pulling the strings.
No. Actually, it's Linda Rice and Obama that are pulling the strings from behind doors.
Let me ask you this:
old school and say it's Hillary and Bill Clinton with Bill Gates and Elon Musk. Come on,
it's not Elon Musk. It's not Elon. But I could follow you on the Clintons. Let me ask you this: whenever Trump ran, does everybody remember how that political campaign was put together? Was it put together as "Make America Great Again" or the Trump campaign, or was it Trump Pence?
It was both. You see plenty of signs of Trump Pence 2016, but you also saw as soon as he dropped the tagline "Make America Great Again," that it became his slogan. So it was pushed just as regularly as Trump Pence.
Okay, and then whenever he was in office, was it still Trump Pence or was it just Trump's administration?
Most times it was treated as Trump's administration.
It was Trump's. So name another presidential cabinet in recent history where it was listed as Biden-Harris.
It never was.
No.
Aha. So is Biden just a temporary headpiece?
Absolutely.
Yes, because I do believe in 2 years they're going to Biden's going to quit or they're going to impeach him. That makes Kamala Harris president.
I think he's going to die.
25th Amendment.
He's the oldest elected president ever.
25th Amendment. They're going to use it. The only reason they even brought it out during Trump when he was exiting, the only reason they brought up that amendment is because nobody remembered it, and they brought it up so that way they can use it against Biden.
Mm-hmm. I think he'll die before then. I think they'll make it way easier. If we're dealing with deep state, if we're dealing with the the undercurrents of how everything usually operates, right? And so he's going to be either proven as being completely incapable of running his office, or he'll just outright die, which means he was killed.
He's also been proven that he can't run the office because he's not allowed to carry the football around with him.
Right. So this is the only administration that you can think of. All of us, for me, the presidents that I remember start with Jimmy Carter. I vaguely remember Nixon, only because of what my parents told me. I don't remember him, but I do remember Jimmy Carter. Okay, I don't know who Jimmy Carter's vice fucking president was to save my life. I remember Reagan and Bush only because Bush became president afterwards. I remember Clinton. Name his vice.
Al Gore.
Al Gore.
Only because he ran against
No, I remember him because of his wife. I was a musician at the time,
Tipper.
and she was pushing the censorship of music. Yeah, so
that decision goes one of two ways: either because of what you just said, or because he ran against Bush. Name Bush's vice.
Or Dan Quayle. And a third option is that dumb, awful fucking book and movie about global warming that he put out.
Global warming, and Dan Quayle wasn't Bush's vice.
No, it was Colin Powell, was it? No, it wasn't.
No, exactly.
No, he
exactly.
was. Bush Senior. No. Dan Quayle was Bush Senior's vice president. Remember the whole entire.
I'm talking about W, bro.
Oh, W? Oh shit! Who was his VP? I know that.
Exactly.
Wasn't it Cheney? It was Cheney. It was Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney, member of the Deep
Dick
State.
Cheney, because I remember all the little jokes now. Colin Powell, Dick Cheney. We have a full office full of
members of the Deep State. And then after Bush, his 2 terms, then we had Obama name his vice president.
Biden.
Grumpy cat. Come on, man.
Answers.
Okay,
no, it was Biden, yeah.
Yes, okay. And then he is the first vice president who went up for election that didn't get it. And now he's back, and he's actually on a dual ticket as a president. It's him and Kamala. It's Biden-Harris. Name another presidential team that's listed that way.
Never.
Promise you never.
Not in memory. Not in memory. Yeah, at least I won't go 100%. I won't go 100%. You're right, never. But I will say that I don't remember it myself.
I promise you never.
Yeah, I probably never do, because I'm going back with Jackson and Johnson and all that. It's always been all the way back then. It's always been their administration, whoever the president is.
Nobody's been listed with them and their vice. Nobody.
Well, I mean, come on. If we want to go that deep state, we could also look at it from the fact of while he was running for office and when he first got elected, but was waiting to take office. He's the only president that ever came before a camera, coming out of an office of the president-elect. Nobody else has ever had an office of the president-elect before.
Yeah, that part is really weird. He kept
that part is
TV.
very weird. That part is very weird. And then also what they're doing right now, everybody on almost every media outlet, they're referring to Donald Trump as, once a president is elected, he is always president.
Right.
Ronald Reagan was always called President Reagan.
What
do they call it? What are they calling Trump?
Former president.
I still call him President Trump.
They call him ex-president.
Right, former or ex.
Not former. They call
ex
him
and former are 2 different things.
Yes. And if you watch CNN, they refer to him all the time as ex-President Trump. That is so fucking disrespectful.
But it makes sense. Yeah.
That is so disrespectful.
It is. And we should go back to the campaign trail real quick with Joe Biden running for presidency. He had no clue what he was doing for the most part. But basically what really came down to it, his wife looked like she was paid off by the Democrats. Let us use your husband to win this election. I think she got paid off to sell out her own husband.
I think she gets paid just to be his
She knows
wife.
He's a sacrificial lamb. I mean, she's part of the political community for 50 years, just like he is.
Yeah, but look at Jill. Look at Jill Biden. I think she gets paid just to pretend to be his wife. What fucking girl that looks like her would be with an idiot like him?
Unlike Michelle Obama, who is paid to pretend to be a female. But
yeah,
whatever.
I'm still jealous.
That wasn't a rumor.
I'm still jealous of Michelle Obama. Her bulge is bigger than mine.
Yeah. I'm just saying. So if we look at all this stuff, you look at the Clinton 236, and you look at the Epstein deal, and when are we ever going to hear her case?
I don't know.
Has anybody brought up his handler?
You mean Christine Maxwell?
Has anybody brought up Miss Maxwell at all in the past 2 years?
No, because
They have?
I've seen it I've seen it on the news. She's been asking to be let out of jail, and she wants to pay for private security and stay in a high-rise.
That's all you've heard, all the stuff that makes her look like a blithering rich idiot. But what other details have you heard? Why haven't we heard her case? Epstein was put in jail without due recourse. He was just put in fucking jail.
I heard that they're not done throwing down the indictments that they have, that she would
she just disappeared. She was on the news. Next thing you know, she was gone.
What you're talking about, her being on the news, that was almost 16 months ago.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That was a long time ago. And after a few weeks of being on the news, and then when it came out to her saying, I have it on document form that who was all involved with Jeff.
When they released those photos of her at the French Cafe, and she had
they never released
in a very particular. Right? Exactly. So why don't we get to hear any details about her?
Because it doesn't fit the narrative that the country's pushing right now. They want to keep us. They want to release the truth of something like that because they're too busy pushing the racial divide, pushing the LGBTQ narratives of changing language and everything else, taking away things like Dr. Seuss and arguing that
I don't think that's
every violent crime.
I actually disagree with Chris as well, because I think they're not even mentioning it because it's gonna incriminate a lot of the Democrat Party.
I don't think it's too much the LGBTQ community. I think it has a lot more to do with the T's.
Well, yeah, the T's, but because they're part of the community, I was using that. I don't necessarily mean somebody who's gay or lesbian. I'm talking about the ones that want to sexually identify as a unicorn.
Here's my point. Our country hasn't changed that much whenever it comes to our opinion on that topic. Yet Cassius Clay had a harder time people accepting him changing his name than Bruce Jenner changing himself into a different sex.
No, that's fair. That's fair, and I think we just lost Mike. He did say he can only stay for a little bit, so
yeah.
Unless he gives me a text to ask to come back in.
I'm thinking that there's a huge proliferation of really weird white guys who like to do really weird fucking things.
But here's the deal. Like to what I was saying, as far as the transgender community is concerned. Yes, whether it was called transsexualism or beforehand it was gender dysphoria, or beforehand of that it was what was the term when somebody
chicks with dicks?
No, when somebody cross-dressed and shit like that, there was another term for it. I can't remember off the top of my head. Regardless of those, they've always been around, and nobody had an issue with it. But now that we're pushing narratives that you have to play into their things, you have to ask people for their fucking proper pronouns, them, theirs, and changing the English language is in itself an assault on the First Amendment, changing freedom of speech. Now, the reason I state that is not necessarily on whether you want to respect or disrespect somebody who is transgender or whatever they want to be considered as, but when you're sitting there saying that unless you conform, you are committing a hate against somebody simply because it's
a new form of bullying.
Exactly. And all these things come back to the same thing. They want to strip you of your rights and your freedoms. They want to keep you divided and hating each other, so that way you can't band together to stop them on what they are trying to do, which is change this country to a socialist utopia.
Well, and let's not forget that the Greek definition of utopia is nowhere.
Mm-hmm. That and the fact that every form of socialism and communism throughout history has always been a failure. But this one will work.
Well, that's always the dream of every new Marxist or socialist state. And that's what we've seen for the past 150 years, since those have become new terms. Before that, it was called the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it was called the Grecian Empire. Before that, it was called the British Empire. These are all just different terms for the exact same thing. And also what we're seeing right now, these are also, it's a very weird conversation to bring up. Serenity, jump in anytime that you want to. But if you look at what's going on in our culture right now with all of this he, she, they, theses, pronouns, and all of this stuff, the way that you're supposed to properly address somebody and everything.
Zeezer.
This loss of sexuality, where men want to be women and women want to be men, but most prolifically, men want to be women, as a social marker and social indication of status. These are historical markers that go all the way back to Egyptian times. And the fall of each one of these civilizations, each one of these statuses that come up, these are all markers in time. These are all markers of falls of civilization. The Greeks went through it, the Egyptians went through it, the British went through it, the Romans went through it, and now we are going through it. History repeats itself. Those who do not read history or understand history are doomed to repeat it. And here we are. And this is a very, very clear indicator of each one of these civilizations that are now lost to history.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And I mean, they're even pushing it further in the transgender community, because nobody cares if a guy, a grown adult, decides he wants to be a woman and even go so far as to get the sexual reassignment surgery or whatever else. If that's what you want to do, power to you, right on. Don't expect me to call you ma'am. But, you know, if you want to do it, that's on you. But we're pushing it to the point that we want to give puberty blockers to 8-year-olds.
Right. That's the historical markers I'm talking about, where people are predetermined to become something else other than. There's nothing wrong with being gay, bi, whatever the fuck, gay or lesbian or bi. There's nothing that's a natural part of humanity. But whenever you're talking about fucking with the genome project and completely changing the physical structure of things and predetermining these things because you want everybody to feel better, you're dealing with a serious loss of reality, and also the core of humanity. We are not made to change what was made. We're not built that way. We can only try to understand.
Right, and again, like you said, there's nothing wrong with being gay or bi or lesbian. I don't even necessarily think as an adult there's something wrong with being transgender. If that's what you want to be, that's what you want to be.
Yeah.
Do you. But don't force everybody else to conform to you when it was your choice to change you.
We're seriously appealing to the lowest common denominator of every form of life, where every states actually are putting it up to vote, where men who are now transformed into women can compete against other women. I'm sorry, I have 50 years of testosterone in me. You put me up against a 25-year-old girl, I'm going to beat the fuck out of her.
And you know what? You're bringing up a very good point, and this is where I will get Serenity to come back into the conversation, because she's been quiet. Feminists, even the third wave feminists, should be in an uproar over this. That you are literally allowing men. I don't care how they identify. Physically, men are beating the shit out of women in their own sports and their own games. Serenity, am I wrong here? Should females be absolutely abhorrent by this? What is the difference between a person in a dress, a guy in a dress beating up on a woman, than a domestic violence call?
It's fair that men and women should be competing against each other, but their point is that they don't think that they're a man, they think that they're a woman. So, like, if you say no to that, then you're not PC, you're not politically correct anymore. So I think that it's just something we're all going to have to get used to.
Not really, because let me make it a little personal for you, just to lay this out. Say Berlin wants to be a female wrestler, okay, collegiate wrestler, and she goes into it and she's doing really good with it, and then all of a sudden here comes my son, who is now identifying as a woman, and he's her next opponent. And he beats the living fuck out of Berlin. How would you feel or react to that?
I'd kill someone.
That's my point. I don't care what they identify as. You are physically not in the same league as the natural born, or cis as they like to use it, females. You should not be competing in their sports.
Agreed.
Do you feel that was a fair assessment, Chris?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. I've got 50 years of testosterone in front of me. You put a 25-year-old girl in front of me, if we're same level or even comparable level, I'm going to beat the shit out of her. If we're going to do hand-to-hand combats, or if we're going to play volleyball. If that was the case, if it wasn't a fair discussion, then LeBron James could have a sex change operation and go to the WNBA and score 840 points a game.
Yeah,
maybe he's going to.
Yeah,
and is that fair?
No, it's not fair, not at all.
Because a woman could not have a sex change and come into the NBA and do the same thing. She'd score a half a point a game. You take the most dominant WNBA player and put a dick on her and bring her into the NBA, and she's going to get crushed.
Well, see that.
No matter how offensive that is for anybody to hear, I'm sorry. You could take the world's greatest 100-meter yard dash runner female and then line up a whole bunch of high school boys against her. And 99 out of the top 100 high school boys would demolish an Olympic female sprinter. High school boys.
It's just physically how we're built. Since the beginning of humanity.
There's advantages to these kinds of things. So allowing a male to compete this way, then saying it's okay because it's PC, is just the wrongest thing ever. Because would you allow your daughter to be exposed that way?
Hey, you know what?
I wouldn't mind.
Hey, you know what? This country is forgetting that we used to celebrate diversity. And I state that because all of this is a diversion to diversity and equity are all a diversion. And we are being led to it because we are forgetting the fact that we used to celebrate diversity. There used to be differences between black people and white people and Hispanic people. And we were supposed
to celebrate it.
And we celebrated the diversity in the cultures because it made Americans what they are. Just like with women. I am tired of this feminist argument and this transgender argument that we're all interchangeable and the same. We're not. A woman is completely different than a guy. And you know what? I celebrate the fact that a woman can't do what a man can do. You know why I celebrate it? Because a woman can do a lot of things that I can't do. Yeah, okay, I can lift 100 pounds more on average than a woman. Great, but she can give fucking birth, and that's fucking awesome.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We're supposed to celebrate the differences instead of worrying about being the same.
You can't water everything down to the point where everybody is the same and we look at each other the same and we have all of these cool pronouns to we're still separating, but we're allowing people to cross boundaries and lines and everything. And if you want to be different in your own way, not that you want to be, you're born that way. I understand it. You're fucking born that way. Cool. You're a dude who wants to be a girl. You're a girl who wants to act like a dude. Cool. You're born that way. But that doesn't mean the dude who was born feeling like a woman gets to compete directly against women in their own arenas, because he's going to beat the fuck out of them because he has one thing women don't: testosterone. The same thing with women. They're able to compete against guys in their own arena because they have one thing that we don't. It's called estrogen. And it's called fucking, Jesus, I'm going to lose this fucking word. But, you know, that mother's instinct.
Maternal.
Men don't have that.
Maybe if they grow out their hair.
If it was up to us, we'd fucking eat all of our fucking enemies' fucking kids. We don't want them to fucking be around. But it's because of women that they all do get to be around. That's the reason the species is able to propagate. And that's at our basic DNA level. And to try to change that just to make everybody feel cool or included is fucking stupid. People are missing what's going on.
Well, that's exactly it. You're hitting the nail right on the head. Like I was stating before about celebrating the differences, I'm going to use the nuclear family as a perfect example of that, and I'm going to use it to explain everything else as far as diversity is concerned, as well as equity. If you want true equality or equity, and there is a difference in the word, okay? Equality is the ability to be able to start on an even playing field and have the opportunity to go as far as you can go. Equity is everybody gets the same outcome. There's a difference between a starting point and an end point. That's equality and equity. Now, the reason I bring that up is because everybody wants equity. But equity is not how you make things work for everybody. And the nuclear family is a perfect example. As I said, men and women are completely different. But what makes a family work is that my strengths and my wife's strengths build the family, and us understanding those strengths and weaknesses is how we build a bond with each other. Instead of her being exactly like me, which case everything is mundane, humdrum, dry, no changes, we do not grow, we do not evolve, and in turn, we don't pass that on to our next generation. Well, it's the same thing with culture. It's the same thing with race. If you don't embrace the differences and learn from the differences, you'll never move past the differences. You will never achieve your equity. It's just a simple fact, but people don't want to look at that. They want the easy route. That's why there's so many divorces. That's why there's race wars. That's why there's still people generations after Jim Crow, generations after the civil rights movement, many generations since slavery, that are still holding on to the hate and all in their heart because of the fact that they don't want to actually put the work in to heal the divide, both whites and blacks. They'd rather just turn around and either say, I want what I want now without working for it, or I'd rather not bother. And that's the problem. It's too much of an easy out to blame somebody else than to do the work yourself. And of course, the powers that be are using that to their advantage to distract us from what's really going on in the world, which, as I said, is a hostile takeover of our American ideals. I'll put my gavel down now.
Hear, hear.
That's just the way it is, and nobody wants to look at it that way, but that's the way it is.
Serenity probably feels attacked.
Why should she feel attacked? She's not one of the people I'm talking about.
No, I just think that it's the way
she has a
evolved.
view. She has a view on this, and I want to hear it because I understand that she has and this is the maternal instinct. She wants people to do what they need to do to feel better. So that's why I'm saying she feels attacked. I don't mean that literally. I'm just saying she does have a different view than we do. I promise you. I want to hear it.
Well, I know from experience that not all children are the same. And some children might be a little bit more feminine and, wear a lot more dresses and love pink, while other little girls might like play soccer. So I know that it's the same way for little boys and little girls, but I don't think that you should let them make that decision at a young age. I think once they get past puberty and they're like 15, 16, 18 years old, if they think that they were born in the wrong body, then who are we to say that's wrong? But for them to decide that and let them change their entire future based on something they did before they even hit puberty, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, and to bounce off of that, did you know that in California and Denver, and there's 5 states that allow this: Massachusetts, Connecticut, Denver, Colorado, California, and there's one other fucking state. There's 5 states that allow this. A child, a 12 or 13-year-old child, can sign up for gene manipulation or the hormone manipulation.
Yeah, the puberty blockers.
Without parental consent. And you can't even check yourself into an emergency room without a parent being present. Okay? But they can sign up for these in these 5 different states. Delaware. They're the other one. These 5 other states, a child can elect to go ahead and sign themselves up for the hormone blockers, the puberty blockers, all that shit. Basically gene sequencing and change themselves without consulting an adult, consulting their parent being involved in the process to understand what their child's getting ready to go through.
Yeah.
Can somebody explain to me how this is not child abuse in every sense of the word?
Can somebody explain to me how this law got passed and nobody fucking knew it?
Well, that's what I mean.
Clips, I'm sure.
That's what I mean. Again, I don't care what an adult does. You're an informed, consenting adult. You can do whatever you want to your body. But these children, at the same age that they say they want to be a fire truck when they grow up, are changing drastically their hormones, their DNA sequences, up to and including genital reassignment, basically bodily mutilation. What if they change their mind?
So the suicide rate in this community is 5 times the national average. Is anybody aware of that?
Yeah, wasn't the percentage something like 55 to 60% of all people who have gone through transgenderism or sexual reassignment have committed suicide?
Not 55% of the community, 55% above the average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're talking about 1.4 out of 100 people commit suicide, now you're talking about 3 people out of 100 who have gone through some sort of sexual transgender assignment now commit suicide. So you're talking about 1% versus 3%, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but you're talking about 100% fucking increase.
Right.
And if you are able to take that down the line a couple more generations, let's look at it this way. We're now living in a nation that we're now within our 3rd generation, almost 4th generation of grandparents raising their grandkids or women raising men.
Yeah.
What do you mean by women raising men?
Single family households.
Family households. And we're wondering why this next generation is so soft. And we're wondering why we have 40-year-olds who live in their mom's basement playing video games without a job. We're wondering why.
Why are you attacking me? No.
Okay. Hard times breed hard men. Hard men breed soft times. Soft times breed soft men. We're now living in what the Indians call the Transluga, which is this time period is a period of softness.
That's fine with me.
Not fine with me.
Is it really? What if the Russians drop in your backyard, Serenity?
We've got enough guns, and I know how to shoot better than anyone else in my house.
Hey, you know what?
Because you know what? Russians full of fucking 3-year-olds.
Russians are the wrong choice of enemy. The Russians
Chinese.
now. The Russians don't give a shit about us. They're laughing at us. It's the Chinese we got to worry about.
Okay, but okay. So here's exactly the head on the nail conversation. Serenity, what did you just say? You can shoot better than anybody in your house, right?
Well, I'm the only one who does in my house, so yeah.
I've got the scars to prove it.
You have a house full of pre-adolescent teens, and so we're dealing with, and this is a very harsh conversation for people to hear. I'm sorry, but you're dealing with yet another generation of boys raised by women or children raised by their grandparents, where they hear on a constant basis, "I don't need a man." Look on TikTok, look on Facebook, look at your children's social media, and look at the message they hear. I don't need a man is a conversation that you hear a lot more than I wish we had a whole family, or I do have a whole family.
I will defend Serenity.
I'm not attacking her.
No, you're absolutely right. But in Serenity's scenario, as I understand it, I will defend her in this aspect. Yes, she is. She does have a strong male person in the household that does help with the children. But Serenity also subscribes to a very old adage that has also been lost in generations, which is it takes a village. She has a lot of good people around her that help her out, that a lot of others, that including these I don't need a man females, do not encompass around. She brings positive people around her children to help influence and grow them correctly.
You're not wrong, and you're not talking 1 in 100. It's not that bad, but you are talking 1 in 5.
Right.
That her situation is that good.
Right. No,
I am blessed because
yes,
I could look. I'm sitting out front and I'm looking at the houses, and there's no house in my block that I can look at that I can't run to and know that they will be there to help me and my family.
The flip side of that conversation is 4 out of 5 live in a totally different situation.
That is true. I know a lot of single parent females that their children aren't even their highest priority, as opposed to the ideals of having positive influences around their children.
And I know I sound like an old fucking school sexist. I'm sorry. I know I do. But what's wrong with that? If there's nothing wrong with a boy feeling like a girl, what is wrong with me feeling that way?
There's nothing wrong with it. There's a difference between masculinity and toxic masculinity, and so, unfortunately, that narrative has been lost in the ethers as well, because being an alpha male does not necessarily mean being the douchebag jock from an 80s chick flick movie. An alpha
I'm not
male.
That guy. I'm the guy who's going to go out and be able to hunt down deer if the apocalypse comes. I'm the one who's going to be able to feed you.
Right.
Not because I'm a dick.
The toxic man. The toxic masculinity person is not the person who works to support his family, is not the person who holds the door for a woman or pulls out her chair. That is a gentleman who is secure in the fact that he's masculine. The toxic masculinists are the ones that try to control women, who beat women, who use women for sex. Those are your toxic masculinists. And guess what? There's just as many toxic feminists as well. But we don't talk about that.
And all of them are a byproduct of another generation of single family households.
Yeah. And I'm fair enough. And in this day and age, I know a lot of people are against the idea of marriage or nuclear families. So I'm fair enough to say, again, like, and using Serenity as livelihood as an example, to where even if you don't have a husband and wife raising children, you could still have good, influential people surrounding your children, be it family, be it friends.
Serenity's doing it right.
Right.
I'm talking about the other 4 out of 5.
Right. I'm using hers as an example, but I'm explaining it to the people that are doing it wrong. You could still bring positivity, male positivity, female positivity, friendship positivity, family vibe positivity from surrounding yourself and your children around the right people.
I completely agree with that, but not everyone is that lucky. Not everyone finds that. And I'm just blessed to have people around me for so long that they're supportive, but it's a hard thing to get. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it definitely doesn't. And that's only one small part of the discussion that I was bringing up, but as far as everything else with what's going on with deep state and everything else, and whatever conspiracy we see going on with the George Floyd case and all that other stuff, what else do you have to say about any of that?
Well, as a I guess a wrap up point, I mean, I kind of made my point. I think this show trial was exactly that, a show trial. It was used as a means to not only continue to divide the races and the people, and of course politically divide. It was used as a political tool to push more narrative. They want to get to a world where we get rid of public servant law enforcement and change it by private security. which do not fall under the Constitution, do not fall under the oath of enlistment. They want to get to the world where basically where we're getting to, where we're at, where we're happy little prisoners in our own little home who buy shit on Amazon and DoorDash through our computers and never leave the house, never rock the boat, never cause any problems while they slowly and deliberately destroy all of our rights and freedoms. That is the ultimate goal. And at the end of the day, they're winning because the ones that see it aren't stopping it, and the ones that don't see it don't want to see it because they're too busy looking in their own little iPhones and their own little worlds and taking their own little fucking selfies and, pictures of their fucking dinner.
The ones who speak out against it get canceled.
Yep, and the ones that speak out. This is probably the final show, Breaking the Fourth Wall Weekly, because I am speaking out against it. I fully expect to be canceled. Yeah. But at the end of the day, everything that we talked about, everything that we've been dealing with for the past couple years, and specifically during the past year in 2020 and the beginning of 2021, have been sleight of hand. It has all been pay attention to this so you're not paying attention to that.
Right. And it's really weird because it's not anything new that's happened over the past 40 or 50 years. It's just the fact that there's such heavy media manipulation. That's what makes it seem like the last 2 years it's really ratcheted up, but it's not a whole lot different, But anyways, I know we got to wrap up. I'll let it go.
No, you're fine. Serenity, you got final thoughts?
No, not really. We went over such an array of topics. Getting back to the first one is a little bit hard for me, but I mean, the agenda is what the media is putting out for us. And obviously with Blind Mike, he only saw what they were selling to him, where everyone in the world pretty much needs to buy into what their belief is. And right now, our belief system is jaded by the media.
Absolutely true. And Chris, your final thoughts before we call it a night.
We've covered a whole lot of stuff tonight. We've had 2 different shows going on here, and I think everything that we've covered, there's a lot of validity in it, and it depends on what side of the fence you're on. Like my old man always explained to me, there's always the haves and the have-nots. The haves will look at it in one particular way, and the have-nots will look at it in another way. Mm-hmm. And I think that today's decision is another separation line of haves and have-nots. And it's empowering, depending on which side of the division that you're on. And I think it's unfortunate that our country is being divided all the time. We're being divided into smaller and smaller groups, smaller and smaller thoughts, smaller and smaller realities. And, I think that there's a very brief window to break out of it, or a very brief window that we all collapse under it. And hopefully we're not in that time period.
All right. And might as well talk. Sign us out of here.
Well, my name is Christopher Scott Rutter, and I am the host of What's Your Effing Binge. You can find us on everywhere that you can find a quality podcast, I guess. So, yeah, there you go.
Serenity?
Oh, well, you guys know where to find me. Just stalk one of these guys, and I'll be there.
There you go. And of course, you guys know you're listening to the show right now. Like, share, comment, subscribe, or check us out on our audio podcast. They can be found everywhere. Just look up Breaking the Fourth Wall Entertainment. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below. We want to know what you guys think, whether you agree with us, whether you don't agree with us. We'd love a civil debate with you. If you don't agree with us, we'd love to agree with you. If you do have do agree with us, just, keep it respectful. Everybody's allowed to have an opinion. It's the whole purpose of the show. But guys, we will catch you next time. And of course, don't forget this Sunday, another episode of Breaking the Fourth Wall Weekly. Till then, have a good night.